Hearing, aim the hearing.
Cool.
Except the hearing.
Yeah, it's advertised as well.
That's the, tell me. All right, thank you, everybody. We're going to go ahead and call to order. We do have a quorum. We have 4 out of 5 members here from the planning board. The first item of business stating the statement of the case. So we are meeting to discuss the proposed adult use cannabis ordinance. We will hear from the applicants and any witnesses and also from the public. Public will be given an opportunity to make statements and ask questions. In terms of correspondence that we have received, there are 3 items that have been made available and both tonight and both online. We have the draft cannabis facility licensing ordinance, the updated definitions regarding cannabis facilities, and the cannabis facility licensing ordinance fee schedule. So those three items were made available on the town website, and there were copies available here tonight. The board has established jurisdiction over the application. It's established in the land use ordinance, and the applicant is the select board and has the right to appear. And now we'll give select board the opportunity or representative or witnesses the opportunity to present the ordinance and updates.
I think you're on, Ed.
Okay. Thank you, folks, for attending. I'm sure you know the 3 select board members. A special guest, Ben McCall. He's from Jensen Baird. He's our attorney representing the town and everything, and he just started really with this question about 6 months ago. The select board went through a number of iterations in the sense of having workshops with people who wanted to support this type of program, talking to other towns and getting their policies, and trying to come up with something that we felt was applicable and the people of Parsonsfield would feel comfortable with. So, and with that, Ben, we started putting a big pot, stirred it around. Ben kept us going with what's legal, what's in with the limits, what we can do, what we can't do, that type of thing. So that's basically where we're at. I'm going to ask David to select the people from the audience, and any one of us will answer. But when you want to speak, please stand up, state your name and your address, and let's only ask the same question once, maybe twice. So that's it. And with that, I'll turn it over to David. And any questions? You must have questions, so.
So the floor is open.
Can I first ask if everyone has had a copy and has had a chance to read it? So, okay.
Yes.
Okay, my name is Jeff Frank. I live at 706 North Road in Parsonsfield. I just picked up on what Ed was saying. There was workshops. Were those workshops advertised?
It was during our regular workshop times on Tuesday afternoons.
Okay,
There's no agenda for those workshops. It's required items.
right. Well, that's why I've always wanted to have an agenda.
Problem is we don't know, but anyways,
Okay, let's move on.
yep. And you all set?
Yeah.
Okay. Anybody else? Carolyn?
I do have a question. It just doesn't sound like a question at first, but it is.
Could you give us your name and address?
Yes, I can't stand up, but I will. Carolyn Chute, I live in Merrill Hill Road.
Thank you. Thank you.
So this is really a question. I don't do wet weed. It's not my thing. But my thing is small, locally owned business. Amen.
Yeah.
I hate big business. They get into our government and then control them. paying attention to the noise. I hate Walmart, what it has done to our communities. And now the internet. These are poison to our community. Whether they have good sides or not, doesn't matter. They poison our community. I don't shop for fashions, but if there were a fashion store in our town, it wouldn't bother me, as long as it was small and locally owned. I don't do donuts, even though I might look like that. I don't, believe it or not, I don't do donuts, but I'm for the donut store. I don't do pansies or have a horse, but I'm for Metcalf. Sanders and JP are our people. They fit perfectly into our comprehensive plan. And yes, as the old saying goes, small is beautiful.
May I ask a
The
question?
question is,
Oh.
how do you guys feel about that? All that small, beautiful stuff.
Well, I certainly understand and agree with your sentiment. If I could ask a question back, are you supporting this ordinance or not?
I support a little business.
You what?
I support little business.
Okay.
It has to take a change in the ordinance be changed.
Well,
What do you can,
go ahead.
oh, I was going to say, what do you consider, I'm with you 100%. That's why we all live here. We want to keep that small business, but I do know that a lot of cultivation facilities aren't necessarily a small business.
What
A lot of cultivation facilities aren't necessarily a small business.
I think the IGA is small business. I forget, how many people is a small business? 100? 500. Yeah, mom and pop and small are two different things. Mom and pop would be paying 500.
So you're saying 500 employees or less?
I mean, it's small, so anything between that and
Okay.
zero.
I guess I'm thinking more far-reaching, not
Will be
just the number,
minuscule.
Yeah.
not just the numbers of employees, but how that business affects everything else that goes on in the business.
Yeah, is that in the,
I mean, it's a supply, so the supplies go out and go to other businesses or facilities. I'm just saying, I'm not saying yay or nay, but
but the money that's made by the owners would stay more here than Walton would ever.
Generally true, yes.
And CMP. A lot of it goes to Qatar, Norway, Spain.
Okay, thanks.
Don't we love?
Carolyn, thank you. Other questions? Yes, Colleen.
It's not a question, it's a
Okay.
statement.
Okay.
So my name's Colleen Alwad. I recently sold my local business 33 years back in February. I sold it corporately because everything I've done and worked so hard for 33 years, I finally had my reward to be able to retire. But as a small business, thank you, David, as a small business of 33 years, I just have to say, if we can welcome any business in our community, we need to open the door to this because right? So we need business locally. We need the tax dollar revenue, regardless of smoking, not smoking, medical, recreational, it doesn't matter. I could not smoke, I could smoke. It doesn't even matter what my personal choice is, but what matters the most is we're bringing business locally. We haven't done that for a long time. So my thought is this, if we are going to welcome a corporate Dollar General across the street or down the road from Village that obviously has hurt a few businesses, we don't see any of this payroll going to our community. They might employ 1 or 2 people, and that's the extent of it, versus 30 people at Village Variety, okay? I'm just giving you a comparison here. So it doesn't matter if you smoke, you don't smoke, it's a business. And we need to recognize that this is a hard-working local individual who's looking to keep the money local, looking to employ local people, continue to employ more local people, and generate income for the town of Parsonsfield. So every other town does it. We've got maybe, 1 in Cornish, That's medical. We have not opened up recreational anywhere in the area. We have an opportunity maybe to help everybody with taxes or bring in more revenue to Parsonsfield. And if everybody keeps their personal opinion out of it and looks at it from a business standpoint, which I'm looking at it as a business standpoint, I think it's a no-brainer. So my personal opinion, I'm 100% for this. I think you're not going to have any better person running the show than Trevor. He's made the business look perfect. He's created jobs locally. They spend tons of money locally, and they put all their money locally. So we need to recognize him for that. Thank you.
Very good. Thanks, Colleen.
I take it you're happy with the ordinance? Okay.
Any business, I don't care if it's selling freaking rubber
Sells
ducks.
weed.
Any business that we can get right now is huge.
Yeah. I'm sorry. I have to stop laughing. You're on, Gary.
Hi, Gary Taylor, I live in 72 Hasty Road in Parsonsfield. Couple questions. We voted a few years ago when the state legalized cannabis. The state required the towns to opt in or opt out. This town voted to opt out on both medical and recreational. So are we going to have another public vote for all the residents to opt in or opt out?
No, what it turns out,
Doesn't the
you
state
don't opt
require
out. You don't opt out, you just opt in. And by virtue of this ordinance being approved, that will be an opt-in for medical cannabis.
But it is going to be voted on.
Oh, yeah, it's going to be
Right.
voted.
This talks about both medical and recreation.
It has definitions for medical, and it talks about caregivers, which the town has no jurisdiction over.
Nothing in here for recreation.
And adult use.
Yes,
It is recreational. I'm.
yes. We talked,
Medical and there's recreational.
maybe we
Okay.
can let you.
One's caregivers, right?
Well,
Oh, I got a few other questions. So how come we're not going to have another vote? The town voted once to opt out on this. So you're not going to, if we vote this ordinance in, I'm not sure, are you going to have a vote on this ordinance? But you're not going to give the people in town another vote on opting in or opting out?
it's, again, by virtue of adopting this ordinance, if it is voted in, that counts as an opt-in
It
vote.
allows that?
Yes,
Okay.
And you don't have to vote for it either. You can vote against it.
right.
I mean, I don't have a problem with the ordinance, but I thought we would get the opportunity to opt in or opt out, where we opted out originally.
This vote on this ordinance,
So there's been a petition submitted to bring this all about. Why hasn't it stayed at the opt-out? Why has it gotten to this? There been a petition submitted
Okay.
to change it?
we, in the last, I'll say the last year, there have been 2 petitions submitted that were denied for various reasons. They didn't pass muster at the select board. At the time, the select board decided that it looks like something's going to happen anyways, so let's put an ordinance together that we know is legal and fits within our framework. That's what this is, whatever our personal opinions are.
Well, I understand that. It's how you're going to regulate it. But the town never opted in on either one.
Okay, I don't,
I
can
understand.
say some different words.
I'm not sure why that
Ben.
went away. And now we've got an ordinance, even though we opted out on both
Sure, so,
through a vote.
sure. So originally, when adult use cannabis was legalized in Maine in 2016, the program was opt-out. That was the first draft, that was the version of the law that was adopted by the entire state. Was a lot of towns, most towns frankly in Maine, like Parsonsfield, either adopting a moratorium or having a town meeting vote expressly opting out of participating in that program. Since then, state law switched basically the process that municipalities go through of determining whether those types of uses, adult use cannabis businesses, are permitted. Now it is an opt-in. But as David was alluding to, there are two ways that the town of Parsonsfield or any municipality, can opt in to one or more types of adult use cannabis businesses. The first would be to have a simple warrant article sent to town meeting saying we opt in. That would essentially allow those businesses to exist in Parsonsfield completely unregulated, except at the local level, keeping in mind that these are very regulated businesses at the state level. The other option, which is what the town is considering now, is adopting an ordinance, which state statute is very clear is the other way of opting in. So this ordinance would go to town meeting. Speaking of the select board, I think that's the intention. In one way, shape, or form, it will go to town meeting. Town meeting rejects the ordinance, then adult use cannabis businesses in Parsonsfield remain prohibited because the town has not opted in per se. If the ordinance is adopted, then the types of adult use cannabis businesses that are specified in this ordinance would be allowed in Parsonsfield, subject to receiving a license from the select board, which is the entire process that's sort of contrived in here. So to answer the question, the entire town will have the opportunity of deciding again whether or not it would like to permit some, not all, types of adult use businesses in Parsonsfield. That'll be your opportunity to effectively reverse the previous decision of opting out of the program.
So will this be an article at the town meeting?
Well, we're looking at doing a special town meeting, probably after our regular town meeting, just because there's probably going to be a lot of discussion at that point, even though we're having this hearing. So, and it doesn't seem appropriate at town meeting, at our annual town meeting, excuse me.
Plus, all the warrant articles are voted on by hand,
Right.
and it's,
This be a paper ballot.
Well,
You don't know yet.
it may be recommended. I mean, town meeting is open vote.
Well, I've got, going back to the past, there's facilities that have developed since we opted out.
Mhm.
And I'm wondering how they came about, because we didn't have an ordinance. We had opted out, and I know of two that came about. We must have issued some permits for these, or,
We haven't issued
okay, so.
permits for cannabis facilities.
Facilities come about from the time we opted out till today that are existing facilities in our town. I guess, no, I was, I go back to a selectman saying at one point, well, I'm not sure what they're doing, but they tell me it's all legal. And that was the explanation.
Yeah.
Not a great explanation, but it seems like the will of the people wasn't followed.
Yeah. There are two issues there. One is that the state is not forthcoming with very much information.
No, but this is at the town level.
I understand.
We
Okay,
approved.
all right.
we can't limit the number of caregivers that are in this town, and caregivers have a right to grow.
So what did we opt out when we voted to opt out on medical? What did we,
Medical facilities,
Stores.
stores,
Storefronts.
Yeah,
They're all-
testing.
all facilities
testing.
can come into this town or, and all of that? None of that, I mean,
The caregivers, now maybe I'm wrong, and Ben, correct me here. Are caregivers still unique from growing medical marijuana for distribution? No, they're the same.
There are two types, and I know there's a dedicated cannabis attorney in this room. And I'm just a municipal attorney who knows cannabis law, so I don't want to get the two confused. There are two types of medical, they're not licenses because the state considers them to be registered entities, I suppose. There are dispensaries and there are caregivers. Dispensaries can grow an unlimited number of plants. They also can have a retail component as part of their operation. That is something that the town of Parsonsfield needs to opt in order to be permitted, and Parsonsfield has not done that. Parsonsfield hasn't done anything about, but
That's dispensaries?
they're dispensaries.
Yeah, okay.
They used to, the state used to limit the number of dispensaries to, I think, 5. That cap has been lifted, and so in a lot of places across the state, you see dispensaries popping up. Then there are caregivers. Caregivers are limited to the number of plants or canopy that they're allowed to grow. State law is very clear that no municipality can prohibit caregivers, and they can't limit the number of caregivers that exist in municipal bounds. There are abilities to regulate caregivers. This ordinance proposes some modest ways, at least in my opinion, to license those existing caregivers. But the presence of caregivers is not something that would have been covered by a previous opt-out vote of the town of Parsonsfield. They're a separate category. There's some, what this ordinance does is it requires a license for they're called cultivation facilities. In reality, what the state considers them are to be caregivers, but facilities outside of a primary residence. So if a caregiver wants to cultivate their plants in a place where they don't live, that requires a license under this ordinance. If they are growing and they're 30 plants or 500 square feet of canopy, and they're doing it at their own home or on a piece of property that is their primary residence, this ordinance doesn't require them to receive any license from the town. But I don't know. I don't have the history of knowing exactly the two businesses you're speaking of. If they were caregivers, there wouldn't have been any license or permit that would have been necessarily from the town in order for them to be legally existing, at least at a state level.
Even if we've opted out, they can still operate. All right, so another question is, so if this ordinance is accepted, this will apply to all existing and new facilities, both medical and recreational.
Correct.
Correct, yes. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
At least the ones that fall underneath the definition, like I said,
They'll be
there's
inspected yearly. And according to this, yearly inspection, there'll be fees, licensing. So the town probably will have, I don't know if it's the code enforcement officer do the inspection, we'll have inspection.
Yes, yeah.
Documented.
Yeah, select board, as a matter of fact, will probably be involved.
And each year, their license gets renewed based on their performance, I would say.
Gary, there's zoning also that goes along with the facilities. There's certain zones that they're prohibited in and certain zones that
I
they,
saw that, yeah.
okay.
Okay, but if,
And we will know,
Okay.
well, for once, because I've been told, we don't know how many caregivers we have, we don't have that information. But if they're all licensed, we will have the information. Everybody will be licensed except people operating out of their homes, right?
The rec ones will be.
Right, recreational, we can't, we don't know the number of caregivers. It's not,
We have no idea how many there is now.
no,
from my understanding, the state
But we can find, we could know that if we wanted to, right? My understanding is code enforcement could get that information.
the Office of Cannabis Policy, I believe, it's not public.
Oh, I know it's not, but I mean, I'm not talking the public has to know, but it would be nice if the select board knew what was going on in this town.
my understanding, Gary, is that the Office of Cannabis Policy will confirm whether somebody has a caregiver license if they are called by the code enforcement officer. But they will not give a blanket, here's everybody who's a caregiver.
Okay.
And we can't call.
We don't know. Okay, why don't we move on?
My question is.
Can we have your name, please?
Deborah Jackson, 34 Gardner Avenue.
Thank you.
Parsonsfield. We live on Gardner Avenue, and I believe there is a grow plant at the old Chevy place across on the ice cream.
Yes.
We at times We can't even sit out in our backyard. The smell is so bad. I don't smoke cannabis. I've never had. My husband has. My kids haven't. But why can't I sit in my backyard without that smell? If you want to grow it, fine. If you want to smoke it, go right ahead. I don't care. But I don't want to smell it.
Yeah.
And I was told that the guy that runs that growing area has the best filters, he changes them and all this. Why do we get such a horrible smell? It smells like dead skunk. That's pretty bad.
Well, I just want to add one. I've heard the same rumors on the same facility.
Yeah, okay.
There's ventilation systems, but they wouldn't be allowed to do it with this ordinance passed.
Okay, that's correct. There is an odor mitigation portion of this ordinance,
Why hasn't it been taken care of?
because we haven't passed the ordinance. That's what we're talking about.
License to grow.
I'm sorry, what?
Has a license to grow the marijuana in that facility. So he
State.
has
Through the
to-
state.
Through the state.
He's a caregiver from the state.
Okay, that's fine, but something's gotta be done.
Well,
I mean, the stink is really bad.
I'll put the extra work in.
I hope so.
I will.
Because it stinks.
I'll go above and beyond.
Smoke's running around out there most
Yeah.
of the time.
Yeah.
Come to find out it was the marijuana plant.
okay, good. Point
It's
taken.
not just that place,
Yeah.
there was a lot.
Yeah,
Okay, well,
Yep.
that's my complaint.
okay.
Okay,
Yeah.
noted.
Anyone else? Yes.
Hi, my name's Jill Cohen. I am a partner at Barrel Data and their Energy Technology and Natural Resources Group. I'm here. Ben already called me out.
Sorry,
You
Joe.
know, it's here. I'm here tonight with Tyler Monahan. He is a property owner at 433 Pendexter.
Okay.
He employs a husband and wife who are local Parsonsville
Are
residents.
you a resident? If I can, you are. Okay,
And so I'm here tonight on behalf of.
okay. I don't have a problem with his lawyer talking, since he's,
You're a resident of Parsonsfield? Okay.
okay.
Thank you. I appreciate it. I know I'm a guest when I appear in towns that I
Mhm.
live in. So we are here in support of the ordinance that you all have put together, and thanks for all the hard work that goes into it. I know what it takes to get an ordinance to this point. Our question tonight is why the dispensary category was excluded. There's been a lot of talk about the regulation of caregivers and the limitations under state law that sort of hamstrings towns from regulating caregivers. By not considering adding the dispensary cultivation category, it creates a situation where somebody could still put 12 caregivers in a building
Mhm.
and they would not be regulated. The dispensary, like Ben said, initially the dispensary licenses were capped at 8 at the state level. In 2021, January 2021, state law changed and they could issue any number of dispensary licenses. The Office of Cannabis Policy really encouraged caregivers who had outgrown the caregiver model to move into this license category. It is much more regulated. The application process is more robust. I brought a copy of the application with me. The application itself is a 5-page application, and that doesn't include the forms that would be filled out by the owners
Mhm.
and all the additional documentation required at the state level. So we're here tonight to ask you to consider adding the dispensary cultivation category. We
Okay.
understand the concern about retail, so we're not asking for medical retail.
Right. I think the simple question right now is that this is what we're presenting tonight. I can see in the future presenting the medical side, the corresponding medical side. But at this point, I mean, we have something, this is our public hearing, and this is what we have to go with. That would be a dramatic change, and we're not ready to make that change just because of the time involved. Going from what we have here for adult use to the medical side may be a simple step, but frankly, I'm not ready to make that step to assume that it's going to be simple, I guess.
Is it my understanding also that a registered dispensary can sell out of their home?
Their home, no, this is a commercial license category. So I do not know that a dispensary licensee, I can't imagine that being approved at a residence because of the security requirements,
Parking.
the standard operating procedures that are required. It's just not a good fit for a home-based cultivator.
And there's no limit on the numbers of plants that they can grow or how
It
much
is
or?
unlimited canopy. However, a town certainly would be within their authority to place limits on canopy if the town chose to. I mean, the reason we bring it up is to sort of echo some of the complaints that are comments and complaints coming from town residents about the regulation of medical cannabis in town. And this is a much more regulated medical cultivation category.
Okay, well, I don't know. Like I say, this is what we're considering tonight and,
We didn't address that.
yeah. Possibly in the future.
Anything that you,
And if
No.
I can speak,
Yes,
my name's Tyler Monahan and I own 433 Pendex Road. I also support the ordinance. I have a greenhouse facility there. And for me personally, I've lived here for 10 years and what this would do to me is make it so that I could never do adult use because I'm just over the canopy size because I have a greenhouse. So I would ask that the town slightly increase the canopy size because of it. You know, I'm a caregiver. We can have caregivers there. No matter what, we can cultivate marijuana there regardless of this ordinance. We just would like to do it so that we could do adult use, so that we could do something different in the future. Because the laws are changing and without adopting them and changing, it's just, all it does is put us out of business and times are already hard enough. For me, it's bad. I like that for Trevor it works out for certain people, but I'm slightly over the size, so all it does is shut my business down. I couldn't do adult use, I'm slightly over the size. It caters to somebody with a slightly smaller building, and I don't think it's right.
so if I can ask, you couldn't do adult use by reducing the number of plants and canopy that you have?
It's a greenhouse.
I don't know what effect that has on your answer or how that answers my question.
Yeah, you could, but it would be like running a large environment and all the lights turn on at once. It's one room. So when you run a facility like that in the wintertime in Maine, you have high fuel costs, you have all these crazy costs to run these facilities, as you guys know. And to run 50% of the facility isn't a realistic thing.
Mhm.
You can't, in an indoor environment, it's different because you have smaller rooms, but for my environment, it doesn't work because of.
Okay. Yep. All right,
So
point taken.
I support it. I just don't think that limiting people in the town, I'm a local guy, I employ local people. I bought my property from Trevor, like, I know all, and it just, all it does is not good for me. I spent tons of money building these places out. And then the town just doesn't want to allow a tier 3, or they don't want to allow this, and then all of a sudden, 8 years of work just kind of goes down the tubes, and then I have to fight for, a ballot or a petition to get it back in front of you guys 2 years later.
8 years of work, so are you saying that you're being put out of business now?
Well, kind of, because what's happening in the marijuana business is that everything's going towards adult use. So the caregiver model is kind of old school. So I have a store in Raymond, I have a store in Mechanic Falls, we're medical right now. What's happening is everything's kind of going to adult use, just like the town is here. That's the future. So as time goes on, that's something that we're going to probably do in the next year, in the next 2 years. And now limiting the canopy sizes, we just can't do it now.
Okay, point. That's something that amendments can take care of at some point.
I think it should be regulated. I want to pay, the town fees. I want to have an annual inspection. I want all that stuff. It's just, for me, with this ordinance, the way it's written, it just kind of, and a few other people here, I'm sure
Okay.
It certainly isn't something the town is undertaking for revenue.
Oh, I know.
Yeah.
But if you have 50 caregivers or 40 caregivers in Parsonsfield, you can get, there's probably more than that in town. And you can get $1,000 of, license, it adds up.
Yeah. But we can't.
Yeah, we can't use license fees
Yeah.
as
For
income. The
care-
license fee has to reflect what it's going to cost the town to take care, to watch that facility as necessary.
And the town isn't licensing caregivers at this time.
Right, yeah.
So like right now, we can have multiple caregivers on site. So regardless, we can still do the caregiver model, but that's not something anybody wants to do. Nobody wants to have 6 caregivers on one site and then 6 state licenses. It's a lot easier to just get 1 license, 1 person, that's more regulated. And it would be what the town wants, in my opinion, is more regulated and stricter. And there's annual inspections, you have to be connected to the police, you have to have fire, you have to have a Knox box. You have all this stuff, and I think the town should consider it.
Okay,
Okay,
got it. Behind
John?
I'm John Lesko.
John.
I just have a technical question for the planning board. Your concern, would it be possible to just get a variance? Because I think the issue, similar issues may come up in the future.
I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, anyone sitting here, but I don't believe we could do a variance for canopy size. I think we would need to include tier 3 at the very least and possibly tier 4 in order to have the increased canopy size. So I know we chose to go with tier 1 and tier 2. I think that's probably trying to keep everything small is what I'm assuming was the thought there. But I think that either in this iteration or a fast follower, a tier 3, tier 4 needs to be considered.
I can chip in on that one too. No, a variance wouldn't be possible for 2 reasons, just as was stated. There are specific uses that are allowed in terms of adult use cannabis cultivation facilities. It's only tier 1 and tier 2, but on top of that, under this scheme as it's developed, there would need to be land use permitting at the planning board level, but also a license issued by the select board, and the select board under this ordinance wouldn't be able to license a tier 3 or a tier 4 cultivation facility. And those facts alone would prevent a cultivation facility from going and getting a state license for that particular use, because the state before it issues a final license and not a conditional license is going to ask the town to sign a local authorization form, essentially saying that the business has all of the permissions that it needs at a local level in order to operate. So,
How far out of conformity are you? I forgot your name.
He might not hear you, John.
How far out of conformity are you now?
I'm sorry, how far out of control?
He's asking how much above the tier 2 level?
I think tier 2 is
2,000, yep.
I think.
May not be, but-
700 or 2,600.
and have-
Right, and tier 3 goes 7.
And to be honest, if I have a medical store and I plan on staying medical, I would just like to just do the dispensary model with cultivation, because I can have 4 caregivers, or I can do the dispensary model with cultivation. I don't want to do retail at all. But I think people with the dispensary model get it confused that the dispensary model is cultivation. I already have a retail store. I don't want to sell weed in Parsonsfield. I just want to grow medically like we do now with a different license. That's actually much stricter.
Okay,
And you're guaranteed annual inspections.
yep,
Unlike
thanks.
a caregiver, you do it every 5 years.
What type of protection are you all gonna need to grow your marijuana with? Do you provide that, or are we gonna have to provide it in Parsonsfield?
Well, usually the police do inspections. I have we have inspections from the police, the fire station. I mean, my property specifically has a 10-foot fence around it. It's locked and gated. Nobody can go there. I'm on Pendexter Road. I'm on a dirt section. I have pretty much no neighbors. I do have some neighbors, but I don't think they mind what we're doing.
Have any odor control or anything?
Find out how they protect
We
their
have,
properties.
we have no neighbors.
Yeah, no neighbors.
Yeah, we don't have odor control.
Someone builds a house up
Okay.
there.
Okay. Colleen?
Can I just say one more thing?
Absolutely.
So just thinking about the whole thing, if the town of Parsonsfield, and again, it doesn't matter what my personal thought is, but again, business perspective, if the town has the opportunity to receive $3,500 for the adult use, okay, for licensing, not including taxes or whatever, okay?
We don't get any taxes, just to know,
Thank
okay?
you for that, because I didn't know that. But I'm just saying, so, and we have all the issues with what's happened down the line with the whole big pharma thing and all the people that are addicted to meth, heroin, this, that, and every other thing, right? Can we just say that somebody that smokes a joint isn't gonna go rob a local variety store? And so let's look at this like legitimately, like logically. Why, like, I don't get like why this is such a bad thing. Again, I don't smoke, I don't care, whatever. I'm just saying, personally, if you have the opportunity for a $3,500 licensing fee, and you have the opportunity to stop somebody who may or may not be addicted to pain med, because I know many people that have been able to cut from 400 to 200 by smoking versus taking pills. Like, we already know what the whole pill epidemic has done to the whole country. You don't hear about people robbing places after smoking a joint. So we just need to think about this logically. That's all I'm saying. Again, people have their own stuff, but me personally, I don't get what the big deal is. Like, they're not robbing banks, people.
Okay, thanks, Colleen.
You're welcome.
JP?
My name is JP Espinosa. I live at 335 Mudgett in Parsonsfield, and I'm also a small business owner. Thank you, Colleen, for putting a shout out about other small business owners and everybody else that supports that. I think also that we as a town will not thrive until we open up arms to a little bit of growth and keeping people working here in this community. And that takes businesses opening up and growing to happen. I am very, very, very proud to employ 8 people locally here who don't have to drive 45 minutes down the road, an hour, or anything like that. They're able to work here in a very humble bowling alley, which most of you guys I've seen there at one point or another, and I appreciate your patronage. I support this ordinance, also owning a bar, and saying that the alcohol that I sell is a little bit more detrimental than weed is on people, okay? And I also face a lot less regulation, even though I do face regulation than the industry does. For everyone, this is just my opinion, I am following this up with a question, so this is a statement to begin with. For everyone that is concerned about the smells or the setbacks and all these things, right now, I really hope that you realize that weed is here in our community. Weed is being grown in our community. You smell it in your backyards every fall in September and October. When you drive into the Parsonsfield line, you can smell it as soon as you get here. You know, everybody's known that, and that's not new. That happened before it got legalized. It's not changing, it's only growing. If you want these things to be regulated, the state's not gonna do it. We need a local ordinance to establish some rules for smell and for where these things can happen in order for us to control that. We need to have a say, because the state, with these caregivers license, isn't really sending people down to address the issues that you guys are concerned about. They're not, because you guys keep going to the state or the select board and talking about them, and you're not getting results. You know, this gives you somebody local to talk to who should be doing that job, and we have it right here if this gets passed. In saying that, we also need to realize, and I think Trevor is an amazing business person. He's done great with the Walker Chevrolet building. He's taken it from looking like a dilapidated building, just like the bowling alley was, and redone that place, and it looks like a reputable place again. He also employs people here locally in town, and I admire that. But we need to realize that this regulation isn't just for him. It's for other growers here in this room. So their voices absolutely need to be heard. And their well-being and their employees absolutely need to be taken into consideration. So as far as business growth is concerned, you know, we have in this room some of the leaders in this community who are our caregivers. So I hope that the board, I understand that you guys are going to write the select board a memorandum right after this with recommendations.
So there'll be a week where open to written correspondence.
Yep.
So that closes at 6 o'clock in our meeting. We will take all that information in, we will discuss, and we will make a recommendation to the select board at that meeting.
I really hope that some of the comments from some of the growers and businesses make it in there, and the select board, you guys are open to considering some of those changes before things go into draft, possibly. If those changes don't go in there, my question, and Ben, I think you'd be the best person to answer this, is let's say we adopt this ordinance as it is today. What would be the process to amend this to include some things like tier 3, tier 4 facilities, changing opening times, because that's a weird one in there, at least from my perspective. And then also, you know, like, this is my personal take, okay? Marijuana is an agricultural product. It's a plant that's grown. Whether you guys like agree with weed should be smoked or not, it's grown from the ground and it's cultivated. I think eventually it'll fall under USDA, but regardless, an agricultural product. You know, I think limiting it from farm and forest is a decision that should be looked at again later. So again, with zoning. So my question is, what's the process if we're to adopt this, which I think is a great starting point for our town to get into this, and it gets us into the adult use? What can we do afterwards to address some of the medical things and then improve upon things?
Sure, it's a great question. It's effectively the same process as you're undergoing right now. You're a town meeting town. Every amendment to any ordinance of the town needs to be approved by town meeting. So you essentially have, there are two sets of ordinances, so to speak, that are being considered. The first, which is brand new, is the cannabis facility licensing ordinance. That's administered by the select board. There's also a companion set of amendments to your land use ordinance, which effectively allows those particular uses in certain zones in the town. That, like everything else in your land use ordinance, starts at the planning board level at this public hearing. They make a recommendation to the select board. The select board is ultimately in charge of the town meeting warrant, what goes to town meeting. So if both of these are enacted as is, then after that town meeting, the amendments would come about, and we would propose the same way effectively that this process all started. They could be initiated by the planning board. They could be recommended by the select board to the planning board. They could come organically, through a recommendation from a member of the public to the planning board, or as happened before, they could come as a petition. And there are specific requirements in terms of signature gathering, and then there are procedural things that happen after that. But I think that's an important point, is that this is a first step. It would allow certain businesses to operate legally in Parsonsfield that are not currently allowed to do so, and to be licensed at a state level. But all of your ordinances are live. Nothing is set in stone, and they're always open to, within the limits that are set by state and federal law, that those ordinances are always open to amendment in the future.
Conversely, if this is voted no, is there a 2-year waiting period before this can be put forth again, just like there was initially, or?
I don't have your land use ordinance in front of me.
Yes, per our zoning ordinance.
So the zoning, if the zoning ordinance does have that in there, then that would control in terms of the zoning ordinance portions of it. Of course, that wouldn't technically affect a new licensing ordinance, but the problem with that is that you can have a licensing ordinance, but the select board is not able to license something to occur that isn't actually a permitted use under your zoning, under your land use ordinance. So they do run hand in hand. So I wasn't aware of that provision, but if that's, seems like everybody's in agreement that that exists, and so that is a generally enforceable requirement.
So I guess to summarize then, so if this goes, if this isn't voted in, then it's 2 years before this can be touched again. Or if this is voted in and there are amendments that can be made to it, those amendments can be started immediately after a yes vote.
They could. I mean, as to the first question, I don't have the language in terms of the 2-year provision in front of me, so of course it's gonna be handed to me right now. Isn't that great? Okay.
But it's the.
But it's a petition.
Right.
So your land use ordinance talks about a repetitive petition. To be clear, although there were petitions submitted that effectively kicked off this conversation, both of these ordinances aren't coming to the select board as a petition. They're in fact ordinances that were drafted by, well, primarily by me, with direction from the select board and the planning board. So if these were, what this says, and I can read it out for people who are concerned, it's that proposed changes to this ordinance being the land use ordinance, which have been unfavorably acted upon, may not be considered again within 2 years of the date of the town meeting action unless the proposed change is recommended by a vote of 80% of the entire regular membership of the planning board. Alternate planning board members are not counted as regular planning board members. It's interesting that this is called repetitive petition, even though it never talks about a petition in it.
Over there, but yeah. So basically it prevents somebody from bringing the same petition.
Yep.
And so it speaks only to that, whereas this process is not the petition, it's the select board providing the, yeah. So if this was to fail, then it could be brought via petition.
Okay. Good.
Question that we have.
Yes.
I just want to be clear, what's in front of us tonight, can it be amended before it goes to the town meeting?
Yeah.
It can. I think probably we won't recommend, well, my personal feeling is we won't recommend that, only because the time that we've spent on this and the anticipated time to modify, at least for what you're looking for, it would put things out further than the two gentlemen in the middle want it to be.
Well, I mean, the good news is your ordinance already has a definition for dispensary. I mean, just throwing that out there, I don't think it would be a huge lift. And if I can make one other comment, because everyone seems to support small business, and you may not realize this, and Trevor may not realize this, Tier 1 and Tier 2 cultivators are struggling under the weight of a fixed excise tax. If you really support small business, you'll at least add a Tier 3. The math doesn't math for Tier 1 and Tier 2 cultivators with that fixed excise tax. It's $3.34 a pound, and it doesn't fluctuate based on the price per pound. It's been a major point of contention in the legislature the last couple of sessions. It'll be a huge topic in this upcoming legislative session. And so when you're talking about capping it at 2,000 square feet, you are going to hamstring small business. If you really do support small business, you'll consider adding a Tier 3. You'll consider adding a dispensary license category, because the math doesn't work for Tier 1 and 2. And I'm afraid it's, inadvertently setting folks up to fail. It's inadvertently creating a system where, somebody relies on a web of unregulated caregivers when you have options, when, you have an appetite to regulate, and we all support that. Not considering adding that dispensary category and adding a Tier 3 to really support small business. Tier 3 starts at 2,000 square feet, so that's still a small business. Even arguably a 5,000 square foot canopy grower is a small business. But it is not in dispute in the industry that the math doesn't work for a Tier 1, Tier 2 adult. I just throw that out there since everybody does seem to agree on that one thing, that we support small business. Thank you. Yeah.
I just want to ask another question, but I want everybody to.
7,000 square feet.
If no one's going to ask a question, then I'll ask my question.
Well, you're on. You have the floor.
Well, just listening to things. So greenhouses, is there a light ordinance that Parsonsfield's going to have where if someone has a greenhouse and it's just this big orange glow, from the sky? I know some towns are eliminating skylights or actually there's this thing called the night skies, where they're telling people no more skylights. But this ruins the night sky. So do we have a light ordinance in this town?
We do not,
Okay.
and it's not part of this either. It's something that could certainly be proposed.
Right, okay. This, it's too bad this wasn't a workshop, because all these things could have been discussed. But anyways, yeah, I'm concerned about, big orange glows, yes, just like you can see, shopping malls, some shopping malls are starting to turn down their lights at night. But if you have a greenhouse and you want to speed things up, plants grow during the day, I know that, but you want to artificially make them grow even at night. And then these greenhouses here and there and there.
Lighting on the building.
Nice house looking down at the valley, you're looking at a big glow.
Right.
It's just something to think about. And this woman mentioned something about the tax per pound. I think that maybe somebody should go to the local officials and ask for that tax to be reduced, and then that would make.
Definitely. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're working on it.
Yeah, no, I'm just saying, as they say. Yeah, sure. That's about it, I guess.
Anybody else? Carolyn?
I'd like to say something, but when everybody's done.
We don't know when they're done, Carolyn.
Well, I just want to say that my grandfather and my uncle raised tobacco in Piedmont in North Carolina, and I used to go down and work with them with the tobacco. They did it for years. My grandfather got the land in the 20s, and they grew tobacco. And then they found out, which was hidden from everybody, but not the farmers, not these little farmers, that this was deadly bad stuff. In fact, my grandfather died of tobacco. But one of my uncles, who did the most of the tobacco after my grandfather stopped doing it, he spent his last years of life feeling terrible. I wish that they were able to grow marijuana instead. That's it.
Okay. All right.
Good way to end the meeting.
Are we all set then? I guess you can move on to your next item, Aaron.
Okay.
We kind of covered two there.
Did kind of cover two for me. Appreciate that.
Hang on, did you find the lighting ordinance?
I was looking for it. I
Jesse or Eric, do you happen to have that in front of you? We do have a lighting ordinance, I know. I know we do. Okay.
Okay.
But,
I'd have to pull
I
it.
don't want to have to keep telling people.
Site plan review.
Hmm?
Site plan application, right?
Yeah, exterior lights must be focused, shielded, or hooded to prevent the direct glare of light off of the site. Exterior lights may only be operated when personnel are on site. That is the,
Interior.
that is, yeah,
That's a good one
that's,
that I don't recall.
but it is,
Exterior lights.
in that case, you have an interior light that is able to go exterior, so
Yep.
Big flat screen TVs.
there you go. I don't know how well they do in a greenhouse. And so as I stated, the only piece that I have left, as I stated, we are going to leave the record open, for written commentary. So anyone here, anyone watching, whether watching live or watching this after, you can submit written testimony for, against, or otherwise, comments, questions to the planning board. I'll make sure that I comment the email address for the planning board email on the comments on this video. It's planning@parsonsfield.org. And so we will leave that open until 6 o'clock for our meeting next week, next Wednesday, 6 PM. We will have a meeting. The planning board will discuss all the comments here, discuss amongst ourselves, make a recommendation to the select board. We certainly appreciate everybody taking the time to
Time's up.
We appreciate everybody coming in, making comments for, against, otherwise. We'll certainly, treat them all sincerely and very seriously. Obviously, this is a big issue that everybody is very passionate about. So I certainly appreciate that passion. And I'm sure we will see some of you there next week. And I do need, because we did open a meeting, I do need a motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor? Thank you.
All right, thank you all.
Is there not a timeline when this has to go to vote after?